that brought me to you today was when I was driving back home from Toronto from a summit similar to this one today. I made the hardest decision of my life: to leave my 13-year engineering career the very next day. I can't explain the sense of urgency, except something deep in my heart was telling me it was the right thing to do. It wasn't as if everything was clear, like I had this beautiful roadmap, but I knew with absolute certainty is the right way to go. That was the day I started trusting the voice deep in my heart and allowing it to pave the way. Have you ever felt this deep unease in the pit of your stomach, like something's not quite right in your life, but you can't pinpoint to exactly what it is? Have you ever felt whenever you reached your goals and look back at your accomplishments, whether it's in your relationship or the career you're in, deep down you knew something was still missing? Or maybe you know what's missing, but you're too afraid to make a change because the fear of the unknown, the possibility of failure, the loss of status. If you felt this way, I can tell you, you are not alone. I have struggled with this confusion for so many years. I lived in massive fear, clouded by denial. And this haze started more than 30 years ago. When I was a young child, I was an exceptional underachiever and underperformer. I almost had to go to a special needs school. I was also kicked out of preschool for behavioral issues. I remembered when I failed my grade 4 social studies exam. It wasn't the first time I failed. It was the most humiliating. In the top right-hand corner of the exam was the biggest, reddest 5% I'd ever seen. Worst of all of my friends were around me. I went home crying that day with a memory that scarred me for life. I didn't realize that this memory, this fear of failure, would subconsciously drive all my life decisions and haunt me years later. I was raised in a typical first-generation immigrant family. You know the kind. Tough love, strict rules. I remembered many enlightened conversations I'd have with my dad sitting at the dinner table over a cup of hot green tea. So, where do you think you're studying university, Tracy? I don't know. Well, in Chinese, there's a saying: the most prestigious careers are Yi Sang Le Si, Gong Qing Si, which translates to doctor, lawyer, or engineering. As a young girl, I could see what he saw. I could be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, or failure. But neither of us understood that not being a failure doesn't necessarily equal to success. In my teenager years, I grew up in Regina in a tiny Chinese community of academic overachievers. And there was this unspoken social pressure and expectation to live up to the Asian success plan. And if you want to be successful, you needed to follow the rules, which are get top grades, get a full scholarship, go to a top university, graduate with a prestigious degree, and get a stable, well-paid job. As a young girl, deeply entrenched in the Chinese culture, I followed all the rules. I rose to the top 1% of my high school, got a full scholarship, went to top 20 global university, graduated from engineering, and got a stable and well-paid job. But getting there was absolutely not easy. And I'm so thankful for my grandma Angin. I remembered bawling my eyes out in the bathroom over an upcoming exam. And my beautiful grandma with her silvery shimmery hair hears me, shuffles over to the bathroom and says, "Tracy, stop being so hard on yourself. Stop working so hard. I used to be like you. I used to cry if I didn't get number one. But, it's not worth it. Stop working so hard. Stop pressuring yourself to be perfect." This is a very modern Chinese lady. She went from being very wealthy, highly educated, the only female student in her school in the 1930s, to a life of poverty during the Cultural Revolution in China. She lost 2 infant sons during the war, survived famine and war, was held hostage in her own home, and became a widow at 40 years old, raising 6 kids by herself. So obviously, she knew what is or isn't important. But I was too young to understand it at that time because grades were important and I wanted perfection. It didn't register in my mind that this life wasn't really for me until 4 years ago, when the physical symptoms manifested in my heart and the alarm bells became too loud to ignore. I was sitting in the living room watching TV when my heart starts pounding so hard it felt like it's pushing its way out of my chest. You know that feeling you get when you miss a step going down the stairs? Imagine that feeling over and over again for a full 2 minutes. For 2 years, I had heart palpitations, racing hearts, pounding headaches. I had this deep unease in the pit of my stomach. I had worked my whole career to get to this point, to this dream billion-dollar engineering project, coincidentally, when these physical symptoms started. I had a stable, well-paid job. My bank account was growing because of my real estate investments. In the eyes of my family, I had made it. I became a gongqing si, an engineer. Checked off every box of that Asian success plan. But that's not how I saw myself. And that's certainly not how I felt inside. I knew something was wrong. Something was not quite right. But I couldn't pinpoint to exactly what it was. So I lived in denial. This would have been a great time to hear my Angin say, "Tracy, stop being so hard on yourself." But she passed away many, many years ago, and I long forgotten her enlightened voice. I later learned I was suffering from panic attacks. And according to Statistics Canada, I'm not alone. Turns out it's actually very common. For every 9 of you here today, 1 of you may experience this yearly. Psychologists have also determined that when our lives are out of harmony with our true self, like our core values are not aligned with our true self, that can lead to the most amount of unhappiness, which can lead to anxiety and depression. Like when you say and do something, like settling in that relationship or sticking to that career, that's not truly how you feel and believe on the inside. In the book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware, the number 1 regret of elderly patients in their last few weeks of their lives was, "I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life expected of me." I am so thankful and so grateful that these physical symptoms showed up in my life and told me I wasn't living a life true to myself. Because if it was left to my analytical engineering brain, probably would have never figured that out. Now, there's a critical activity that I'm very excited to share with you in the next few minutes. But before I let you know what it is, I have one more story. 4 years ago, in the process of self-discovery, it led me to a summit similar to this one today. And there was a critical activity that I did that triggered my aha moment. I wrote a letter to my grandma, Angine, at this summit. It said, "To my grandma, I miss you a lot, and I never got a chance to say goodbye. To make a change in honor of your life, I'm going to live a life that you would be proud of and happy about. To enjoy the moment because it's a gift, to be grateful with what I have, and the courage to live a meaningful and more purposeful life that's not driven by money, but fulfillment." Now, it's your turn. I want you to experience this critical activity that I did for yourself. Are you ready? Yes? Okay, game on. So there is a postcard on each of your tables. You'll need it to complete the next activity. Okay. So I need you to imagine a loved one. Oh, I'll get you a couple. Okay. I need you to imagine a loved one, someone who has recently passed away. And I would like you to write a letter, or in this postcard, in honor of their passing, to live a life true to yourself, and to achieve the one thing that's bugging you, that you've been putting off, that would cause you a life of regret. I'll give you a few minutes to think about this and to write it down. Go ahead. When I went in the office to hand in my resignation, my mouth went dry. My heart was racing, and my brain was telling me, run. But I knew with absolute certainty it was the right thing to do. A sense of calmness started to take root that day, and that was the day my heart palpitations and racing heart stopped. That decision marked when everything began to change for me, and I owe it to my grandma Angine. My life is a lot different now compared to 4 years ago. I left engineering and spent a whole summer taking care of my twins. Now, losing a 6-figure income was not easy. I had to really cut back expenses to do that. But spending that extra time with my twins was more important than money. I also started a personal finance website, which has reached 183 countries around the world. The thing is, writing is not my strength. It's quite the opposite. But I knew I had to share my investing experiences with the world. So I started writing, and I kept on doing it. I also went from a couch potato runner to running 7 obstacle races with my family. I hadn't run since I was in high school, but keeping healthy with my family was so important. So I jumped into those races and I kept on doing them. I also started a successful consulting business in a completely new field. Making that change was scary. But I knew if I didn't do it, my life would be filled with regret. So I had to make that change. This was made possible because I had a very, very supportive husband and my kids who were part of that journey. The best part of it all, I'm the most healthiest, most present, and the happiest I've ever been. To make a change in your life, you have to be open and to acknowledging that you're settling somewhere in your life that isn't quite right. And be willing to say goodbye to your old self so that you can start your journey to living a more meaningful and purposeful life. I believe fear prevents all of us from living life to the fullest. But life is too short to live it for someone else. It can be scary. It probably feels super uncomfortable. But women give birth. We can handle this transformation. Together, as women and men supporting women, let's find the courage to acknowledge your fears. Pursue clarity using your intuition. Challenge your inner self to help inspire you to stop settling in life, to take action, to do what you love to do so that you can build your amazing life that is the best version of you. When you leave home from this summit today, please think of what you wrote in that postcard and think of the one change that you want to make. Please trust yourself that as long as you continue to put one foot in front of the other, follow your heart, set time for reflection. Clarity will seep in. Stop living the life expected of you. Start living the life that's more truly aligned to you. Allow yourself to become the best version of you. Thank you.